And it's hard for us to imagine, oh, this is a 30 or 40-year cycle. This is a generational cycle that we're going to have to go through. So I won't have my job today, but somebody else will have a job, 25, 30 years from now. Does that really matter to me that much? Am I going to change my habits today because of that? The answer needs to be yes, but is it going to be on a practical level? Hello, Nathan here for Measured Light, and welcome to the second ever climate news reaction video. Maybe you're wondering what a climate news reaction is, and luckily for you, I've done it before, so you can check that out via the link here. If that doesn't sound interesting to you or just takes too long, just know that it's me reacting to climate news. If that's the kind of content that you're into, make sure to hit that thumbs up and tell the YouTube robots to do their thing. And with that, let's get into it. We're starting this week with Tucker Carlson. I know it's going to be good because every time I watch Tucker Carlson, I basically want to pull my hair out. So, all right, with that, let's get into it.
So the Keystone XL pipeline was slated to create 11,000 good-paying jobs. Now it will create precisely 0. Joe Biden killed it in his first week in office. But there is some good news. And that news comes from John Kerry. He's now the White House's global warming whisperer. He flies around on a private jet to better understand the enemy. John Kerry's message...
All right, so let's just stop there for a second and say, that's hilarious. And the idea that John Kerry is flying around on a private jet and to better understand the enemy is really like troll gold. Tucker Carlson's writing team really did a good job there. I will say that I even have questions about John Kerry's role as the climate czar, and I made a video about that as well, so I'll link that here as well. But I think that he's an interesting character to be out there flying around the world and representing the United States as somebody who, is the right person for the job to help with climate change. Now, with that said, he's done a really good job in the whatever month and a half that he's had. And, we've already taken a bunch of different steps, getting signed into the Paris Climate Accord, all sorts of things that is under his purview. So, do I think he's the absolute, picture perfect person I want out in the world representing the United States when we talk about climate change? Not exactly, but at the same time, he cares. When I see him talking about it, I know this dude cares. It's just his approach and style and, lifestyle maybe doesn't fit the bill.
He flies around on a private jet to better understand the enemy. John Kerry's message was simple. All the people who are out of work actually have an alternative. They can go build solar panels in China.
What President Biden wants to do is make sure those folks have better choices, that they have alternatives, that they can be the people who go to work to make the solar panels. They were making them here at home.
Wait a second, he didn't say anything about China. He didn't say anything about building solar panels in China. He said building solar panels here. What is Tucker talking about?
Zito is a reporter at the Washington Examiner and a columnist at the New York Post, and we're happy to have her on today. So thanks so much for coming on. There's something about that clip that really, no matter how you feel about fossil fuels, is infuriating. The high-handedness with which he dismisses adults, Americans' jobs. I mean, what do you make of that?
Well, it's incredibly insulting to tell someone they're going to have a better job. Well, what's the description of better? Better paying? I don't think so. Solar panel
what are you talking about? Yes, that
jobs
helps.
Are notoriously sometimes 3-4 times less than what you would make on the Keystone pipeline. And they're also jobs that will uproot them from their communities and their families.
What?
These are aspects that are very important to these workers, that they're because...
Okay, look, when they build pipelines, a lot of times you're shipping people in to help build pipelines, one. Secondly, when you're talking about sustainable or renewable energy sources, you're talking about having those kinds of jobs everywhere. It's not having solar jobs just in the Canadian border. It's like you're really having them everywhere. So I'm curious what she's talking about, but okay, we'll keep going. We'll go along with this.
Because they're very connected to their community.
I notice there's sort of a built-in bias among our leaders against traditionally masculine jobs and in favor of kind of neutered, sad Davos-type jobs. I mean, do you see a threat in this at all?
Did a man who wears makeup and sits behind a camera all day writing things just question masculinity? Oh, wait, what am I doing? Oh, gosh.
Well, the problem I see is a problem that people that make these decisions are people that more likely than not haven't worked with their hands. And they don't quite understand the satisfaction of doing that.
Oh,
and
God.
they don't understand why you would even want to do that. But, I would argue if you're going to impact someone's life, why don't you go to where they live and look them in the...
I don't know. But I wonder if either of these people have ever had a manual labor job in their entire lives. Like, it's such a weird type of hypocrisy to sit back and be like, oh, like these people love working with their hands, whatever. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. There's this bizarre, weird assumptions. Also, the idea that this is like a global thing versus a local thing is very strange to me. When we talk about these concepts, it's like they don't understand it. Climate change is a global issue, and that when we talk about impacts on certain communities in the United States, specifically communities that are going to be like overly impacted by climate change, those aren't the communities creating the problem. It's a global issue, so the globe is creating the problem, and then those communities are simply punished for them. And of course, we will learn that as time goes over, that the communities that are going to be disproportionately impacted are going to be Black and brown communities. They're going to be poor communities. And as people start to leave, this goes into domestic migration, which I talked about in my last video. When you think about domestic migration, what will happen is that rich people will migrate. The wealthiest people will migrate away, and the people who are left are the people who can't afford to leave where they're at, where the climate change is having the most impact. So I just think that this overall conversation and approach is not the best one.
In the eye, or maybe do what they do and understand why it's important to them and why that's part of their identity.
Right. You've covered the news for a while. How many times have we heard whatever they're taking away is going to be replaced by something better? Didn't they say that NAFTA, trying to join the WTO, we're going to retrain you for something better? How'd that work?
So what this really reminds me of is what happened around in my area in western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio in 1977. It was known as Black Monday, where thousands of people lost their job in one day in one industry. But what they didn't take account for was that the barber shops, the hotels, the schools, the school districts, and President Carter at that time refused to meet with those union workers who went down and asked him to listen to them and help them about their jobs. It's the same thing we're seeing here.
Yeah, so I don't know too much about this, but I think that there's also this component of businesses reverting. I don't think that change was completely about policy. I also think that the industry was pulling out of Western PA. So okay, that was interesting. I think that that's not as crazy as Tucker Carlson can make me from time to time. This lady seemed very nice. She seemed very sweet, but I'm pretty confident she didn't say one complete sentence in the entire video. So I'm not totally sure what she was talking about. But I do get the impression that this is very much targeted towards their constituency on Fox News, and that there's not really a lot about climate change there, though they did get some really good troll work in on John Kerry. All right, with that said, let's get into the next video. The second video this week is a Blackpink video. I've not watched this video. I do know who Blackpink is, and really the reason I wanted to do this video is I just want to get all the K-pop stans on my side, because the K-pop stans clearly own the internet, because whenever they want to take over something, they just do. So let's watch some video of Blackpink talking about climate change.
Hi, this is Blackpink.
It's like I'm getting to do a music reaction video.
This is a global challenge. Each and every one of us could make a difference, and we need to act now.
This is our planet. This is our future. Climate change affects us all.
That's what I want my YouTube channel to look like.
We all probably saw it, but definitely the documentary that Sir David Attenborough presented, A Life on Our Planet, has helped us a lot, and various other platforms such as that.
Okay, so just quickly, I didn't know that. So this is a BBC video, clearly, and they're talking about Sir David Attenborough made this documentary called A Life on Our Planet. It's called David Attenborough, A Life on Our Planet. And so if you don't know who he is, he's like an old school BBC journalist who has spent a lot of his career writing about and making BBC documentaries about the environment and about, I don't think about his climate change as much. This newest movie is about climate change, but I think a lot of his historical work is really about going out and seeing the planet and thinking about the different ways communities live and thinking about the ways that we impact nature. But it wasn't really about climate change per se, but this newest piece that they're apparently going to be talking about is really about that. And I think you can just watch that documentary on Netflix. So, all right, let's see what else they have to say here.
Has helped us to actually learn more about what we could actually do to sustain our beautiful planet?
Basically, the documentary showed us how
Wow, really
precious
digging
our
in.
planet
This is about the documentary.
and how vulnerable it is right now. So we're losing more of the natural world every day, and time is running out, we feel like. So we just really felt like we need to say something, you know.
Yeah, I think we've all still got so much more to learn, but it feels good that we can be able to participate in such a...
Yeah, this is interesting. I also have a lot to learn. But, I think that it's great to see people who are saying, like, we're learning, you're learning, but let's speak out. Let's use our platform to really speak out. And remember that when we think about, like, climate denialism is, like, really an issue for older people, right? And so the idea that these young people are using their platform to tell other young people, like, hey, it's really important that you think about your habits. It's really important that you think about your impacts on the planet, is one that I think is really great and really powerful. I don't know if Blackpink is bigger in the UK than they are here. I don't know that much about that. So I'm curious if their platform there is really, like, powerful.
An important cause.
All right, so this is us getting everybody signing the Paris Climate Accord, which the United States just reconnected ourselves to. As you know, as I talked about with the John Kerry piece, we reassociated with the Paris Climate Accord then.
저희가 전달하고자 한 메시지는 함께 배우고 노력해 나가기에 지금도 늦지 않았다는 것을 얘기하고 싶었습니다.
The first step is to know what's happening with climate change because it affects all of us, and we want to learn more, and we hope our fans do too.
All right, with that, let's get into the last video. Today we're going to be watching Bill Gates talk about his new book, I assume. I haven't seen this video yet, but he's been in the climate news a lot lately, talking about his new book and different aspects of his thinking in regards to existential crises. That happened primarily, I think, due to his prediction of a global pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see what they're talking about here. This video is not sponsored by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Like many of the videos I've seen recently, hey, Bill and Melinda, if you want to hit me up, I'll give you my number. I don't know. But what do you think this is? Casually explained? That dude gets all of the sponsors. I'm not him. All right, with that, let's get in to see what Bill Gates has to say and what they're talking about in regards to his new book.
The overwhelming majority of scientists in the world agree there is a looming climate crisis. The rising temperature of the globe has been linked to more frequent severe storms. And that's why Bill Gates
Nora
is now
O'Donnell's hair
determined to
is
get
so
the
nice.
world to
I'm
take
jealous.
revolutionary change to save our warming planet. His new book is called How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And we spoke with him earlier about just how big the challenge is.
Most things we do physically involve emitting greenhouse gases. And so the scale of the change, it's bigger than anything humanity has done to date.
You write in the book, the loss of life and economic misery caused by this pandemic are on par with what will happen regularly if we do not eliminate the world's carbon emissions.
Wow.
You mean 500,000 Americans dead regularly if we don't deal with this climate disaster?
That's right. The death toll would be even worse near the equator, and the unrest, would be global in nature. And sadly, you couldn't just invent a vaccine. So
Yeah, I think this is great. I think this gets right into what we were just talking about with the Tucker Carlson video, right? Like, if you think about where the most impact is going to happen, the hottest places in the earth is around the equator is where it's going to happen. It's closest to the sun. You're going to see those environments change the most rapidly. You're going to see migration away from those areas happen the most rapidly. The poorest people who can't migrate will be the most, impacted. And so I think that that's a great approach to think about it. And his his scale is only global. I think that when Bill Gates talks, he's not talking about a country, he's not talking about a state, he's not talking about a city. His scale is only global, and so he's thinking about, okay, you're talking about 500,000 deaths all the time because we're going to be thinking on a global scale. So I think that this is a really smart approach. Clearly, he's thinking very deeply about these impacts and what the world's economics are going to look like when you really start to take climate change on a global scale into consideration.
You've got to start work now to avoid those terrible consequences much later.
Fossil fuels are cheap, and I know you want to move towards eliminating them. What happens to the 2.8 million Americans that are working in the oil and gas industry?
This is a 30-year transition, and there's lots of clean jobs that can be created in those same locations. A total number of jobs will actually go up. There may be some places there's dislocation, and so as we budget, we have to think about those affected communities as well as funding the innovation and deployment.
Let's turn now to the pandemic.
Okay, so what he's saying there too, right, is that as knowledge work becomes a larger portion of the work happening on the planet, as we think about the different ways people are going to work in the future, we have to think about that. Look, geoengineering is a real problem. I think that Bill Gates thinks on some level that technology is going to solve the problems of climate change, and that it will be the tools will be a massive boon into how we take on this challenge. The problem is that we don't really understand the impacts of geoengineering. And so even when we talk about things like carbon capture, we don't know exactly what that's going to do if we take carbon and pump it down back into the earth. We don't know what it's going to be like if we have billions of solar panels suddenly that we don't know how to recycle or don't know how to process. Now, when it comes to the jobs thing, I've said this before, but I think it's really important that when we talk about climate change, we talk about the practical implications of it, specifically how it's going to hit our wallets. I think that brings it home for people. I think that that's a narrative that people can really connect to and understand. And so I think he's doing a little bit of that there, but it's a little bit passive to just be like, oh, we're going to take these jobs and we're going to replace them with these jobs. That may be true, but again, it's hard for us to, as individuals, to understand existential crises. And it's hard for us to imagine, oh, this is a 30 or 40-year cycle. This is a generational cycle that we're going to have to go through. So I won't have my job today, but somebody else will have a job, 25, 30 years from now. Does that really matter to me that much? Am I going to change my habits today because of that? The answer needs to be yes, but is it going to be on a practical level? So, okay, let's finish out this and see what he says about it sounds like they're going to talk about COVID-19 vaccines.
Do we need to create a new vaccine for these Brazilian and South African variants?
The discussion now is, do we need to get a super high coverage of the current vaccines, or do we need a third dose that's just the same, or do we need a modified vaccine? And all 5 of the companies are looking at making that modification and adding that in.
I know he's a smart guy. I don't totally know why we're talking to him about these vaccine questions.
In addition to your first 2 shots?
Yeah, but it's still circulating. We might need something that takes this new shape of the spike protein.
I wonder if just by being a billionaire, you have
so you might need a
extra information
this year.
Bill Gates, such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, I really do wonder that at the end there. I'm wondering, I wonder if just by being a billionaire in this kind of community, does he have additional access to people? Does he have additional information about what's going on? Why are they talking to him about COVID-19 vaccines? Is he distributing COVID-19 vaccines? Maybe he isn't. I don't know. So if I'm wrong, tell me in the comments below, and we'll learn together. All right, with that, that's the end of the second Climate News Reaction video. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and tell the YouTube robots to do their thing. If you're still around, consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification so that you'll find out about all of the new content that's coming out in the coming days, months, and weeks. All right, thank you for your time, and see you next time on Measured Light.